भारत और अमेरिका के बीच आज सामरिक और वाणिज्यिक वार्ता का एक दौर चला और इस बीच विदेश मंत्री सुषमा स्वराज और अमेरिकी विदेश मंत्री जॉन केरी मीडिया से बातचीत कर रहे हैं। आइए सुनते हैं।
External Affairs Minister Srimati Sushma Swaraj, Secretary of State Mr. John Kerry, Commerce and Industry Minister Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman, and Secretary of Commerce Ms. Penny Pritzker. Commerce and Industry Minister Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman and Secretary of Commerce Ms. Penny Pritzker to this joint press interaction. We will first have press statements by External Affairs Minister, Secretary Kerry, Commerce and Industry Minister, and Secretary Pritzker in that order. After that, the principals have agreed to take a couple of questions, which I will be handling together with my US colleague, Mark Toner. With that, let me request Honorable External Affairs Minister for her press remarks. She will be speaking in Hindi, so those of you who need simultaneous interpretation may please put on your headsets. With that, I give the floor to Honorable External Affairs Minister.
धन्यवाद विकास। संयुक्त राज्य अमेरिका के विदेश मंत्री सेक्रेटरी जॉन कैरी, वाणिज्य मंत्री सेक्रेटरी प्रिंसकर, मंत्रिपरिषद में मेरी सहयोगी श्रीमती निर्मला सीतारमन, मीडिया के मित्रों, भारत और संयुक्त राज्य अमेरिका के बीच नई दिल्ली में आयोजित दूसरी राजनीतिक और वाणिज्यिक वार्ता में सेक्रेटरी कैरी और सेक्रेटरी प्रिंसकर का स्वागत करते हुए मुझे बहुत खुशी हो रही है। सेक्रेटरी कैरी के साथ मेरी बातचीत में द्विपक्षीय, क्षेत्रीय और वैश्विक मुद्दों पर विचारों का बहुत उपयोगी आदान प्रदान हुआ। मैं वैश्विक मुद्दों से प्रारंभ करना चाहूंगी। सेक्रेटरी कैरी और मैंने आतंकवाद अहम चुनौती है और जो अंतर्राष्ट्रीय शांति और सुरक्षा के लिए सबसे बड़ा खतरा है, इस विषय पर विस्तृत चर्चा की। मुझे आपको बताते हुए खुशी है कि इस मुद्दे पर हमारे विचार बिल्कुल एक जैसे थे। There was a meeting of minds on this issue. भारत और हमारे क्षेत्र के एक बड़े भूभाग में पाकिस्तान की ओर से सीमा पार आतंकवाद की लगातार बनी हुई समस्या से मैंने सेक्रेटरी कैरी को अवगत कराया। हम दोनों इस बात पर सहमत थे कि किसी भी राष्ट्र को आतंकवाद पर दोहरे मानदंड नहीं अपनाने चाहिए, जैसे अच्छा या बुरा कहकर आतंकवादियों में अंतर करना, और ना ही उन्हें आतंकवादी संगठनों के लिए सुरक्षित शरणस्थली बनना चाहिए। हम इस बात को हमने एक बार फिर दोहराया कि पाकिस्तान के लिए यह आवश्यक है कि वो अपने यहाँ आतंकवादियों और आपराधिक नेटवर्कों जैसे कि लश्कर ए तैयबा, जैश ए मोहम्मद और डी कंपनी के लिए शरणस्थली को खत्म करे। सेक्रेटरी कैरी और मैं इस बात पर भी सहमत थे कि पाकिस्तान को 2008 के मुंबई और 2016 के पठानकोट आतंकवादी हमलों के जिम्मेदार लोगों को सजा देने के लिए जल्द और कठोर कार्रवाई करनी चाहिए। इसके साथ ही सेक्रेटरी कैरी और मैंने आतंकवाद का सामना करने के लिए अंतर्राष्ट्रीय विधिक व्यवस्था को मजबूत करने पर भी चर्चा की। हम इस बात पर सहमत हुए कि आतंकवाद का सामना करने के लिए आपसी सहयोग के लिए और उपाय किए जाने चाहिए, विशेषकर ऐसे आतंकवादी जिनकी पहचान कर ली गई है और संदेह के घेरे में हैं, उनसे संबंधित सूचनाओं के आदान प्रदान के समझौते को शीघ्र प्रभावी करने की आवश्यकता है। हमारी इस बात पर भी सहमति बनी कि हम आपस में इंटेलिजेंस को साझा करने में तेजी लाएंगे और संयुक्त राष्ट्र के द्वारा आतंकवादियों और आतंकवादी संगठनों को उसकी इस संबंध में बनाई गई सूची में लाने के लिए मिलकर कार्य करेंगे। इस संबंध में हम संयुक्त राष्ट्र की 1267 नंबर समिति में अपने दृष्टिकोण में समन्वय भी कायम करेंगे। दूसरा, हमने जलवायु परिवर्तन और स्वच्छ ऊर्जा पर भी व्यापक चर्चा की। भारत और संयुक्त राज्य अमेरिका दोनों पेरिस समझौते को पूर्णतः लागू करने को उच्च प्राथमिकता देते हैं। आप सबको याद होगा कि इस समझौते को अंतिम रूप देने में प्रधानमंत्री श्री नरेंद्र मोदी और राष्ट्रपति ओबामा ने बहुत अहम भूमिका निभाई थी। हम इस बात पर सहमत हुए हैं कि हम स्वच्छ ऊर्जा पर अपने सहयोग को और बढ़ाएंगे और प्रधानमंत्री जी की अमेरिका यात्रा के दौरान इस क्षेत्र में अमेरिका से भारत में अधिक निवेश लाने के संबंध में की गई घोषणाओं को मूर्त रूप देने के लिए तेजी लाएंगे। हम इंटरनेशनल सोलर अलायंस की सफलता के लिए अमेरिका के साथ काम करने को लेकर आशान्वित हैं। हम एजेंडा 2030 को उसके 17 टिकाऊ विकासात्मक लक्ष्यों के जरिए लागू करने के लिए भी साथ साथ काम करने पर सहमत हुए। ये लक्ष्य हमारी सरकार की स्किल इंडिया, मेक इन इंडिया, स्वच्छ भारत और बेटी बचाओ बेटी पढ़ाओ जैसी प्रमुख पहलों के अनुकूल हैं। इस तथ्य के दृष्टिगत कि हम संसार की कुल मानवता का 6वां हिस्सा हैं, एजेंडा 2030 के टिकाऊ लक्ष्यों की सफलता और असफलता इस क्षेत्र में भारत द्वारा हासिल की गई सफलता पर निर्भर होगी। मैंने सेक्रेटरी कैरी को एनएसजी में भारत की सदस्यता और संयुक्त राष्ट्र सुरक्षा परिषद में भारत की स्थायी सदस्यता पर संयुक्त राज्य अमेरिका द्वारा समर्थन जारी रखने के लिए धन्यवाद भी किया। हमारे क्षेत्र, विशेषकर अफगानिस्तान में हो रही घटनाओं पर भी हमने विस्तृत चर्चा की। हम इस बात पर सहमत हुए कि हम अफगानिस्तान में नेशनल यूनिटी गवर्नमेंट को सुदृढ़ करने के लिए मिलकर काम करेंगे। हम तेजी से बदल रहे क्षेत्रीय और वैश्विक परिदृश्य को असरदार तरीके से सामना करने के लिए अपने विचार विमर्श को और व्यापक करने पर भी सहमत हुए। हम अफ्रीका और बहुपक्षीय मुद्दों पर इसी वर्ष विचार विमर्श करेंगे। हमने पीस कीपिंग में भी आपसी सहयोग को मजबूत किया है। इस संदर्भ में हमने हाल ही में अपने अफ्रीकी सहयोगियों के लिए पहला यूएन पीस कीपिंग कोर्स शुरू किया है। ये संपूर्ण विश्व में शांति, सुरक्षा और विकास में हमारी भागीदारी का द्योतक है। समुद्री सुरक्षा यानी मैरीटाइम सिक्योरिटी के क्षेत्र में भी सहयोग को मजबूत करने पर हम सहमत हुए। जापान के साथ हमारी त्रिपक्षीय से आगे बढ़कर अब कार्रवाई के स्तर पर पहुंच गई है। इसमें क्षेत्रीय संपर्क और आपदा राहत में मानवीय सहायता भी शामिल है। मित्रों, द्विपक्षीय स्तर पर अमेरिका के साथ हमारी साझेदारी आज मानव प्रयासों के सभी पहलुओं को छूती है। इस संदर्भ में विभिन्न क्षेत्रों में हमारे बीच मंत्री स्तर पर विचारों का लगातार आदान प्रदान होता रहा है, जैसे रक्षा, वित्त, शहरी विकास, वाणिज्य और उद्योग, ऊर्जा, पर्यावरण और वन, पेट्रोलियम और प्राकृतिक गैस के क्षेत्र में। आने वाले महीनों में इस प्रकार के और आदान प्रदान की योजना है। टोटलाइजेशन यानी सर्वव्यापीकरण और H1B और L1 वीजा की फीस में बढ़ोतरी को लंबे समय से चली आ रही समस्या के समाधान के लिए भी मैंने सेक्रेटरी कैरी का सहयोग मांगा। ये समस्याएं लोगों के बीच आदान प्रदान को प्रभावित करती हैं, महत्वपूर्ण स्रोत है। कुल मिलाकर मैं कहना चाहूंगी कि आज की बैठक ने हमारे विकासात्मक लक्ष्यों और रणनीतिक प्राथमिकताओं के लिए अमेरिका के साथ साझेदारी को मजबूत किया है। हमें विश्वास है कि भारत अमेरिका साझेदारी न केवल हमारे दोनों देशों के लोगों को लाभ पहुंचाएगी, अपितु इस क्षेत्र और संपूर्ण विश्व में शांति और स्थायित्व को स्थापित करने में भी महत्वपूर्ण योगदान देगी। धन्यवाद।
May I now invite Secretary Kerry for his remarks to the media.
Swaraj, for your very thoughtful comments, and thank you for an outstanding dialogue throughout the course of today, and thank you for your partnership on so many important issues. In more than 2 years of working together, I have to say that you have always lived up to your reputation as a fierce advocate for India's interests and for India's citizens. And I know that you have never wavered in your belief about the importance of strengthening the relationship between India and the United States, and we thank you for that. I also want to thank my colleague and my friend, Secretary Penny Pritzker, and her counterpart, Minister Sitharaman, both of whom have understood the importance of the commercial ties between our countries and of also bringing our private sector leaders to the table for these discussions. And we had private sector leaders, very important leaders. and Minister Mistry of the Tata Group and David Cote of CEO of Honeywell, and they contributed significantly to this discussion. Let me just, for a moment, on a personal level, make a comment, an observation that I made at the end of our meeting today. I've had the privilege of coming to India since, I think, in the 1990s, if I recall correctly, as a senator. And I had a chance to, on occasion, talk with various groups about our relationship. And I experienced a period of time when we were struggling to come out of the Cold War still, and struggling to build a relationship. In the last 2 years, I must say, there has been no sense of that. We have really moved amazingly in this relationship. And the evidence of that is that just yesterday, our defense minister in the United States and your defense minister visiting in Washington signed a defense logistics agreement between our countries. Today, we signed a cyber agreement where we will work together on cyber issues. We have topped $15 billion in defense trade between our countries. We have agreed now to move forward on 6 Westinghouse nuclear reactors, which will provide energy for 60 million Indians, not to mention an enormous number of jobs. We have some 40 government working groups that are now engaged in working on different issues, and some 70 or so initiatives between our countries. So I think we are witnessing a moment that defines for certain a very different and renewed relationship between the United States and India. And all of these steps and more than I have just mentioned have strengthened and redefined our dialogue, and they have energized our entire relationship. And I think Sushma would agree with me about that. To me, the wide-ranging talks and constructive talks that we held this afternoon reaffirm something that we can't take for granted, and that is that when two democracies that are as large, as dynamic, as vibrant, as interdependent as ours can not only make a big difference for our citizens, but I believe we can make a difference in taking steps that have an impact, a positive impact on people in the rest of the world. And I was struck by the comment that Sushma made just a moment ago about this is a discussion that, because of India's size, does represent more than 1/6 of humanity on this planet. That is an important discussion by definition. That is why President Obama made the U.S.-India relationship such a high priority for him, and I'm sure it is why Prime Minister Modi did the same. And it's why our agenda today was such a large agenda. I'm very pleased to report that we made headway on a variety of issues in this second security and commercial dialogue. To bolster our mutual defense in an age when threats can come from literally anywhere, we committed to a joint cyber framework to reduce cybercrime, to encourage responsible behavior in cyberspace, to improve coordination among our technical experts, and to improve coordination among our law enforcement agencies, and to promote cyber research and development. And we reaffirmed India as our major defense partner and welcomed the signing of this new agreement that took place in Washington. To more effectively counter the threat that is posed by violent extremism within both of our borders and beyond, we agreed to expand the exchange of terrorist screening information, to deepen cooperation in designating terrorist groups at the United Nations, and to expedite mutual requests for legal assistance. More broadly, we reiterated our unwavering commitment to the protection of our citizens and to defeating the terrorist mantra of bigotry and of hate. Now, let me be clear. The United States continues to support all efforts to bring the perpetrators of the Mumbai and the Pathankot attacks to justice. And we cannot and we will not make distinctions between good and bad terrorists. Terror is terror, no matter where it comes from or who carries it out. And to build on our shared leadership in combating climate change, the United States is going to do more to help India upgrade its power grid and work with our private sectors in order to help provide financing for innovative renewable energy projects and clean energy entrepreneurs. That is the only way we will have a chance of adequately meeting the promise of Paris and adequately meeting the challenge of climate change. Our civil nuclear cooperation will bring affordable, clean energy to tens of millions of Indian households as we move closer in the use of safe, modern, latest generation modular nuclear power. And my government looks forward to making the promise of Paris a reality and of being one of the countries that will soon officially join the Global Climate Agreement. Now, to halt unnecessary loss of life and prevent diseases, we intend to develop and start clinical trials for vaccines against dengue and tuberculosis. And to reaffirm our mutual roles as essential players on behalf of security and progress in this region, we will restart trilateral talks between the United States, India, and Afghanistan at the United Nations General Assembly next month. Doing so is going to enable us to determine how best to build on the past gains of securing villages, empowering women, educating students, and promoting good governance across Afghanistan. And I want to thank India for the important contribution it has been making to the efforts in Afghanistan. Now, there were, of course, a lot of other issues that we discussed, including our robust student exchange programs, cooperation in space, support for women's rights, and making it easier for Indian travelers to enter the United States. The bottom line is that India and the United States are more deeply engaged on more important issues than at any time in the history of our relationship. In other words, we are cooperating and we are working more closely together than ever before. And this is a product of the many interests and the values that we share, and it is a process, I think, that also comes from the deep respect that we have for each other and for the personal relationship that Prime Minister Modi and President Obama have built together. In closing, I again thank my friend, Minister Swaraj, for her special hospitality and her leadership, and to say that I look forward to our continued collaboration on behalf of peace and security in the months and the weeks to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Kerry. May I now invite Honorable Minister for Commerce and Industry, Srimati Nirmala Sitharaman, to make her press remarks.
Thank you. We had a fruitful and productive meeting at the second Strategic and Commercial Dialogue meeting, which was held today. Both the sides appreciated the intense engagement between India and the United States under various work streams and various economic initiatives under the S&CD mechanism. It was assessed that ties between the United States and India have never been stronger, as reflected by the unprecedented commercial cooperation, high levels of bilateral trade, and highest ever FDI inflows to India in 2015-16, especially from the US. In the morning, Secretary Pritzker and I held discussions with the US and the Indian CEOs and took into account their extremely valuable suggestions on economic development initiatives. I thank the US CEO Forum co-chair, Mr. Dave Kote, and Indian CEO Forum co-chair, Mr. Cyrus Mistry, for successfully articulating major concerns and recommendations of the CEOs on both the sides which will form an important input for our ongoing work under the SNCD. A number of recommendations made during the previous two editions have already been acted upon. Based on the CEO Forum recommendations, we have agreed to take a focused intervention in the following areas. One, we have launched a transparent government e-marketplace, GEM, developed by the DG S&D. We have agreed to look at best practices exchange with GSA, Advantage, which deals with government procurement in the US. We will work on best practices on procurement models and will look at collaboration between the Department of Expenditure and the US TDA. Two, taking forward innovation and entrepreneurship work stream, we have agreed to focus our attention on small and medium scale enterprises. We would be looking at creating a platform for sharing of best practices and technology, as also address issues of finance and market access for SMEs, and thus promote their integration into global value chain. We have agreed on a program called the Silicon Valley Comes to India, which will have experts from USA coming to India to interact with startups and provide the required momentum to Indian entrepreneurial ecosystem. The third is under the commercial track of the strategic and commercial dialogue. Secretary Pritzker and I had extensive discussions on bilateral economic initiatives and reviewed the progress made since the last SNCD under the 4 work streams relating to infrastructure collaboration and smart cities, ease of doing business, innovation and entrepreneurship, and standards. Both sides welcomed the addition of travel and tourism as a new work stream for future collaboration. We took note of the progress in infrastructure and smart cities collaboration, such as the Smart Cities Business Development Mission to India, reverse trade mission to USA by the Andhra officials. It was agreed that the US TDA will collaborate with Andhra Pradesh government for facilitating integrated master plan development, and the US TDA collaboration with Ajmer and Allahabad to facilitate their proposal for the Smart City Challenge stage would continue. The collaboration initiated for municipal bonds with Pune would also continue. We were very happy to share that reforms in commercial law, such as the bankruptcy code, and policies such as Make in India have yielded remarkable benefits facilitating ease of doing business in India. The offshoots of our constant focus on innovation are there for all to see. India's ranking in the Global Innovation Index has shot up 15 places this year alone. India and the USA have agreed to co-host 2017 Global Entrepreneurship Summit in India, which will bring together entrepreneurs, investors, educators, government officials, and business representatives from all around the world, creating a new opportunity for investments, partnership, and collaborations. We have signed the GES Statement of Intent for this event. We have decided to work together to see how US companies and investment bodies tap the opportunity of India's infrastructure projects through mechanisms like the National Infrastructure and Investment Fund. Both sides will also facilitate collaboration in research in health sector, specifically focusing on non-communicable diseases like the cardiovascular ailments, diabetes, and cancer. We welcome the exchange of best practices in the area of standards and outcomes of roundtable organized by the CII in association with standards regulators of both the countries. We discussed the NPL and NIST collaboration, which would look at both developments of reference material production and collaboration on physical, mechanical, electronic standards. A technical delegation on standards to US is also proposed, which will engage with NIST on reference material production, conformity of assessments, and conformity in standards. BIS will also engage with NIST on TBT inquiry point and sector-specific guides. We agreed to encourage the CII and ANSI, the ANSI partnership, for development of standards portal and other initiatives as per the MOU signed during the last SNCD. We agreed to make a new addition to the existing work streams under the SNCD on partnership in the travel and tourism sector. Both sides recognize the huge potential for engagement in advancing bilateral trade in travel and tourism services, and it was agreed to observe 2017 as the Travel and Tourism Partnership Year. Given the increased tourist movement between both the countries, the cooperation in the areas of best practices in tourism administration and marketing, public-private partnerships, diversification of travel and tourism expertise, niche markets, and promotional activities are likely to benefit both the countries. Both countries discussed their priorities for economic development and the policies initiated to achieve these objectives and agreed to continue their engagement in fulfilling the potential for bilateral trade between the two largest democracies of the world. Thank you.
May I now invite Ms. Penny Pritzker, U.S. Commerce Secretary, to deliver her press remarks.
Let me begin by recognizing my co-chairs, Secretary Kerry, Minister Swaraj, and Minister Sitharaman. Thank you for all of your commitment to elevating the strategic and commercial dialogue and strengthening the U.S.-India commercial partnership. I also want to recognize the co-chairs of the U.S.-India CEO Forum, Dave Cote and Cyrus Mistry. They injected, and the CEOs that they work with, they injected recommendations and perspectives of our country's private sectors into the bilateral commercial relationship. In the 2 years since Secretary Kerry and I first became the first U.S. cabinet members to meet with Prime Minister Modi, the relationship between the United States and India has blossomed and grown. This is a tribute to the progress made through the SNCD and to the real domestic economic reforms undertaken by the Modi government. I applaud the Prime Minister, Minister Sitharaman, and the government of India for their ambitious agenda, including the landmark Goods and Services Tax Law, the new Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, and the decision to raise foreign direct investment caps in key sectors. As a result of the progress through the SNCD, and as a result of the Modi government's reforms, today, the United States and India trade more with each other. We invest more in each other, and we do more business together than ever before. Our challenge has been to build on that progress by thinking bigger, acting bolder, and delivering real results. And I believe we met that challenge during today's SNCD. Our governments, as Minister Sitharaman delineated in detail, agreed to advance our ongoing work and move forward on a series of new initiatives that will promote our shared goal of close productive relationship between our nations and our people. Over the next year, our governments will partner to implement new recommendations from the U.S.-India CEO Forum, including facilitating financing for infrastructure and energy projects, the development of India's smart cities, enhancing digital infrastructure here in India, improving the ease of doing business, and supporting our small businesses, our innovators, and our entrepreneurs. We're excited about that our governments will soon sign a partnership agreement to launch the Global Procurement Initiative here in India to encourage the broader adoption of value-based procurement methodologies in India's civil sector. We also agreed to strengthen economic ties between U.S. and Indian states and cities, including by highlighting state-level business opportunities and linking U.S. and Indian companies looking to invest with local leaders and economic development officials in both of our countries. Finally, we will inaugurate our first ever bilateral dialogue on travel and tourism tomorrow. In 2015, the United States welcomed 1.1 million visitors from India, up from nearly about 600,000 Indians who visited the United States in 2008. Last year, India welcomed 1.2 million visitors from the United States. It's quite obvious the opportunities for growth are tremendous. Our new effort, our first ever bilateral dialogue on travel and tourism, will ensure that we're well positioned to capitalize on our status as travel and tourism partner countries for 2017 and to bring even more visitors to our respective shores. Today, as we close our second strategic and commercial dialogue, the strategic and commercial partnership between the United States and India has never been stronger. In a very short time, we have seen how this dialogue can make us stronger economic partners. However, we have much more to do to reach the incredible potential that exists in our commercial relationship. I look forward to building upon the trust, the openness, and the honesty we have developed, and I thank Minister Sitharaman for her partnership and leadership. Thank you.
I thank all four dignitaries for their press remarks. We will now have the Q&A session, which I'll be conducting together with my U.S. colleague, Mark Toner, who's Deputy Spokesperson of the U.S. State Department. The principals have agreed to take a total of 4 questions, 2 from the U.S. side and 2 from the Indian side. I want a show of hands, those who want to ask questions. When you do that, please also identify yourself, the organization that you represent, and which of the 4 principals you would like to address your question to. I recognize ANI for the first question from the Indian side.
My question is to Secretary Kerry and Sushma ji. Secretary Kerry, India has been a long-standing victim of terrorism sponsored by Pakistan. Today, in your talks with her, what did you convey about the U.S. position on this? And Sushma ji, जो आपकी आज आतंकवाद से लेकर बातचीत हुई कैरी साहब से, क्या आप उससे संतुष्ट हैं? क्या उस पर रोशनी डालेंगी?
Well, thank you for the question. I think I answered the question in my opening comments, in which I made it very, very clear that the United States stands in strong partnership with India against all terrorism, no matter where it comes from, no matter what form it takes. And as I said, there's no good terrorist here and bad terrorist here. Terrorism is terrorism. We stand fully behind India in demanding that there be justice with respect to the Mumbai attacks, with respect to other. And we have had conversations with all of the members of the region, frankly, about efforts they need to take to curb terrorism that comes out of their countries. And that is true of everybody, anywhere in the world. So I think it is crystal clear that the United States and India are of exactly the similar mind with respect to the issue of terror and the need to not only prevent it, but to bring those to justice who perpetrate it.
आपके सवाल का दूसरा भाग मेरे लिए था। मुझे लगता है सेक्रेटरी कैरी का जवाब सुन के मुझे ही नहीं, आपको भी संतोष हुआ होगा। मैंने अपने प्रारंभिक वक्तव्य में भी बताया था, अमेरिका और भारत मित्र देश हैं और विश्व के सबसे बड़े लोकतंत्र हैं। मित्र देशों से जिस तरह की अपेक्षा आतंकवाद के मुद्दे पर की जाती है, उसी अपेक्षा के अनुरूप सेक्रेटरी कैरी ने मुझसे बातचीत की। जैसे अभी भी उन्होंने कहा, चारों बातों पर वो सहमत थे। इस पर भी कि आतंकवादी को अच्छा बुरा कह के अंतर मत करो, इस पर भी कि आतंकवाद को की शरण स्थली किसी सरकार को, किसी देश को नहीं बनना चाहिए, इस पर भी कि मुंबई और पठानकोट के हमले के आतंकवादियों के खिलाफ जल्द और कठोर कार्रवाई होनी चाहिए। और इसके साथ साथ यूएन की जो समिति है जो आतंकवादी संगठनों को या आतंकवादियों को प्रतिबंधित करती है, वहाँ भी हमारा समर्थन करने की बात उन्होंने की। तो मुझे लगता है जो बातचीत आतंकवाद के मुद्दे पर सेक्रेटरी कैरी के साथ हुई और यहाँ भी जैसा उन्होंने उत्तर दिया वो बहुत ही सकारात्मक दिशा दिखाता है।
Over to you, Mark, for the next question.
Thank you. First question on the U.S. side is Leslie Rotten of Reuters.
Thank you. Madam Foreign Minister, I wanted to ask you what needs to happen for dialogue to resume between India and Pakistan, and how concerned are you that the possible escalation of these tensions and possible further cross-border attacks if no talks are possible? And then for Secretary Kerry, can you elaborate a little bit more on the trilateral Afghanistan talks that you mentioned, and how you see this perhaps helping to resolve the tensions within the unity government? And is there also a fear that with those talks and what you're saying today, that Pakistan might be feeling more isolated, as you mentioned about the closer dialogue with India, the Afghan talks, and what you said on terrorism?
देखिए, हम दोनों के बीच जो तनाव की बात आपने की, आपको इतना मालूम है कि हमारी ओर से कोई तनाव पैदा नहीं किया गया। हमने पाकिस्तान के साथ रणनीति में पहला मुद्दा ये रखा कि हम शांति से हर चीज़ सुलझाना चाहते हैं और उसके लिए हमने हर तरह की पहल की। जब ये सरकार बनी, सरकार बनने से पहले शपथ ग्रहण समारोह में पाकिस्तान के प्रधानमंत्री को बुलाया, उसके बाद फॉरेन सेक्रेटरी लेवल टॉक्स की शुरुआत करने की बात की, लेकिन उन्हीं की तरफ से ऐसा किया गया कि हमें वार्ता रद्द करनी पड़ी। उसके बाद भी जब मैं इस्लामाबाद गई तो कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव बायलैटरल डायलॉग शुरू करने का फैसला करके लौटी, लेकिन उसके बाद प्रधानमंत्री जी लाहौर गए पर लौट के आके हमको पठानकोट मिला। तो कम से कम अब आप जब बात कर रही हैं कि हम क्या चिंतित हैं या हम बातचीत कैसे शुरू कर सकते हैं, कम से कम हमारे देश की इतनी अपेक्षा तो है कि पठानकोट पर कोई कार्रवाई होनी चाहिए। आतंकवाद और वार्ता साथ साथ नहीं चल सकते, ये हमने कह रखा है, तो इसलिए कोई चिंता की बात नहीं है, लेकिन एक अपेक्षा हमें ज़रूर है और बातचीत तभी शुरू होगी जब कम से कम इन चीज़ों पर कोई कार्रवाई होगी।
With respect to the first part of your question, trilateral and what can we hope to accomplish and why, India has been enormously helpful with respect to Afghanistan. Prime Minister Modi has visited Afghanistan twice to inaugurate Afghan's parliament and also to, most recently, to inaugurate the India-Afghanistan Friendship Dam. There are major infrastructure projects in Afghanistan that India is investing in. I think there's about $2 billion of Indian investment in Afghanistan, and clearly it is in India's interest, as it is in Afghan interest and our interest and Pakistan's interest, frankly, to have a peaceful and stable Afghanistan that is no longer under siege from the Taliban or from any other group that tries to use its territory to propagate terror. So our hope is to be able to strengthen all of the efforts that we have been deeply engaged in for a long period of time through these talks, and perhaps even to find ways ultimately to explore the possibilities of peaceful resolution of the conflict, which is something we have also been seeking through various efforts to engage the Taliban. I might add, under the auspices of the leadership of the Afghan government. That is a critical component of it. None of this would be done separate from whatever President Ghani and the government decide they want. In addition to that, the question of Pakistan feeling isolated because of it, et cetera, I think all of us are in touch with Pakistan in one way or the other. I have most recently talked to both the Prime Minister and General Raheel Sharif regarding the need for Pakistan to deprive any group of sanctuary. And, Sushma has talked about this danger of sanctuary in any place. It is well known that the Haqqani network and others have operated out of the western part of the country. Lashkar-e-Taiba is a threat, as we all know, and one that we have all spoken out against, and which has had an impact on India directly. And so it is vital that Pakistan join with other nations in tackling this challenge. And in fairness, in recent weeks and months, they have been moving much more authoritatively in the western part of the country on the strongholds of the Haqqani network, and I think recently have made difficult decisions in order to carry that elsewhere. So we have to keep working together and stay in communication on these efforts, and that's exactly what we are doing. We also are in touch with the unity government in Afghanistan. I have had personal conversations with both President Ghani and Chief Executive Dr. Abdullah. Our special envoy, Rick Olson, and the ambassador, Mike McKinley, are working extremely hard right now with all of the parties, as are others, in encouraging them to resolve the differences that exist. And I think India's participation, frankly, can only help strengthen those efforts and underscore to the government of Afghanistan the importance of them being unified, of working through whatever difficulties exist, and of remaining stable in the face of the challenges that they face. So my hope is that Pakistan, on the contrary, is not isolated by this, but is encouraged by this, and finds in this a roadmap for its own choices, because we all need to be engaged simultaneously and in the same direction in tackling this challenge of terrorism. The government of Pakistan has made it clear to me that they are deeply committed to this effort, and we need to cooperate as much as possible in order to rid ourselves of this scourge that is disrupting life in so many places, in so many parts of the world. And I believe we are, I might just add, this is not part of your question, I am convinced we are on the road to success. It takes a while. Daesh is significantly under pressure in Iraq and in Syria. We have liberated communities from Ramadi to Fallujah to Tikrit to Manbij city in Syria and so forth. There is not one area, one city, one major plot of land where, since last May, a year ago, Daesh has succeeded in assaulting and holding and taking new territory. So there are obviously big challenges of communication, of recruitment, of dissatisfaction in certain places that they try to appeal to. But that is the value of the kind of meeting that we had here today. It is to organize our efforts and to make sure we are cooperating as broadly as possible on a global basis, because there isn't one country in the world, not one, that supports the intentions of a Daesh or of a Boko Haram or of an Al-Shabaab or any of these other terrorist entities. And they're the ones that will be isolated by what we are doing here today.
Second question from the Indian side. I recognize Elizabeth Roche from Mint.
My question is for Mrs. Nirmala Sitharaman. Ma'am, has there been any addressing of India's concerns on the, visa fee hikes from the U.S. side, and on the totalization agreement? Has there been any discussion on that in the SNCD, and what kind of assurance have you got from the American side?
Yes, both in the SNCD and also in the CEO forum, the issue of visa fees and the totalization have been taken up. The industry spoke during the CEO forum, and during the SNCD, the commercial track, we've also raised the issue. I must thank Secretary Pritzker, who came forward proactively and spent some time also with, I understand, industry representatives. And then she's offered, and with her due consent, I would like to say this, that she will look into this matter definitely. And because there was this feeling by the industry, which was voiced during the CEO forum meeting, that probably the Indian industry is under the impression and is pushed to believe that they probably are being targeted. And we do not want, as the industry said, we do not want anything which would affect the mutual trust that prevails between India and the United States. As a result, to dispel the feeling of being targeted and to also ensure that the feeling of trust which prevails between the two countries, Penny Pritzker came up voluntarily during the meetings on her own, said she would take it up, will look into this matter and see how it progresses. So I'm indeed thankful, because that was a very candid and open forthcoming statement from the Commerce Secretary. We did raise it, we voiced our concern, we gave estimates of what damage it would do to our industry too. Thank you.
I would just like to make a couple of comments on this subject. You know, if you step back and think, the goal of the strategic and commercial dialogue is to strengthen one of the world's most significant partnerships. And when industry expresses concern that they're being targeted, it's absolutely imperative that we look into that issue. I don't believe that that's true, because the United States recognizes the enormous contribution of foreign workers to our economy, including our workers from India. And increasing U.S. and Indian business ties has been one of our highest priorities. And we greatly value the Indian companies that invest in our economy. And in fact, Indian foreign direct investment into the United States is around $11.8 billion as of 2015. And in fact, if you look at the data, Indians are the beneficiaries in fiscal year 2015 of about 69% of all H-1B visas and 30% of all L-1 visas issued worldwide. And any changes that have been made to our H-1B and L-1 visa application process, they're not limited or focused on Indian nationals. They're an across-the-board change. But given the concern expressed by Indian industry, I committed to Minister Sitharaman to look into this and to report back. So I will be working with the State Department to understand how we're implementing the new laws that we have.
Thank you. The final question will go to Nick Wadhams from Bloomberg.
You, for Secretary Pritzker and Commerce Minister Sitharaman, on the issue of TPP and TTIP, it looks like TPP is opposed by both U.S. presidential candidates, and Germany and France are now saying that TTIP should not proceed. So do you believe that we're sort of returning to a system where bilateral treaties and trade agreements are sort of the order of the day. And then in line with that, I noticed that over the course of the day, there was no mention of the BIT between India and the United States. Is that an indication that an investment treaty is sort of dead in the water, that there's too much work to be done on that right now? And can you talk a little about the importance of proceeding with the BIT? Thank you.
Let me begin by saying the trade agenda for the United States has been a top priority for President Obama and for all of us in the administration. And trade is always difficult to get done, and particularly multilateral trade agreements. TPP is an agreement that we've completed negotiation. We're in a process to see if we can get this passed. Our president and our entire administration remain completely committed to that agreement. It's not only an important economic agreement, but it's an important strategic agreement for the United States. It really underscores part of our commitment to our partners throughout the Asia-Pacific region who want us and want our businesses to be more present. They want to adopt the high standards of labor standards, environmental standards, e-commerce standards that will enable them to trade as a first world nations. And so this is not an agenda that we are foregoing at all. As it relates to, the BIT with India, I make the same statement I made to the previous question, which is, this is my third visit to Delhi. I've had many, many meetings with Minister Sitharaman, and our teams have met, because we are focused on strengthening one of the world's most significant partnerships, both from the strategic standpoint and the commercial standpoint, which is why we elevated the commercial side of our relationship. And, one of my proudest accomplishments as Secretary of Commerce is the commitment we've made to that elevating of our economic ties between the United States and India, and the progress that we've made towards achieving the vision that President Obama and Prime Minister Modi set out for us, which is to strengthen, deepen, and broaden our commercial and economic engagement. As it relates specifically to the BIT, a high standard U.S.-India BIT would provide real economic benefits to both of our countries and would significantly boost India's efforts to attract U.S. investment. But it's not in anyone's interest, or neither of our interests, to negotiate an agreement that doesn't meet those high standards. In the meantime, we've made enormous progress, and whether it's facilitating financing for energy projects, infrastructure projects, whether it's investment in India's smart cities, enhancing the digital infrastructure here in India, improving ease of doing business, supporting small businesses, innovation, entrepreneurship, growing our travel and tourism. We have a robust agenda where enormous progress is being made.
Me to respond on that? On the model investment treaty, the model investment treaty that we have made has been shared with the U.S. authorities. We'll certainly want to have inputs coming from them. Based on that, we would like to continue the dialogue. As regards TTIP and TPP, you observed rightly, the president candidates of the U.S. have both spoken about it. At this stage, there's nothing that we can comment. We certainly will wait to see how, after the elections, the TPP is progressing. As regards European Union, we will also wait to have a dialogue for a FTA with European Union. We've asked for dates. So for India, it's a time to wait and watch, although we are eager to continue talking.
This concludes the joint press interaction. Thank you all.